The first thing I do in painting this haunted house in watercolor is to mask off the house itself using Nichiban tape, my favorite tape. It's very thin. The problem is that when you're new to using Nichiban tape, you might cut into the paper. So you have to learn what is the proper pressure to apply with your X-Acto. Here I'm using Maskoid and a small round brush to mask these trees. Once the masking is complete, I'll paint the sky. It's the furthest thing back, and holding the edge is very, very important so that the sky and the building don't mix. I start with just basic water and I just keep adding to the washes of the sky. When the sky is completely dry, bone dry, no pun intended, completely dry, that's when I remove the tape and the Maskoid, not before. You don't want to tear the paper. Okay, so my color theory and strategy in doing this painting is all about moonlight and the sides of the house, the faces of the house that might be washed in a sort of a yellowy, darkened yellowy, going to green color, and then turning the corners with a bluer, cooler nightshade of the same color so that we see the forms of the house easily. And the same thing is going to hold true of every detail on the house. There'll be a side that's lit by moonlight and a side that is dark. Once the first washes of the building are done, then I'll come in and start with some details. And you see, the underside of these eaves and the balcony and the porch covering and everything like that. Now, deep under the porch, the walls will be darker. They won't receive as much moonlight. An initial wash on the grasses, and I like to have washes shift in color and shade and tone. I think they're more interesting when a wash shifts in color as opposed to being flat, in this style of painting anyway. And also, painting in watercolor is an additive process. So I will let these washes dry, sometimes completely, before adding new washes, especially in detailed work like this. You see, I've gone to a smaller round brush and one that'll hold a very fine point. And this is really the fun of it, adding the details, making that one window broken, having some windows be open, making sure that they not all are the same value and color, because light glints off of glass and it can look different. The one open window on the third floor with a little bit of light from within to add a little bit of mystery. What's going on in there? And one of the important things at the detailing stage like this is I make sure that the paint layers down near the base of the painting where I'm going to rest my hand, I make sure that they're completely dry. I have made the mistake of smearing the paint by putting the heel of my palm into it. So when I paint this second layer of wash on the grass, I will let that dry completely before I move on to doing any more details on top of the building. The last thing you want to do is ruin a detail down at the base by putting your hand in it. So when I'm doing that tree, I am sure that the base of the painting is safe. Now, even in the darkness, I don't like things that are completely flat. So that's why that tree, I had masked out that tree so that I could get some value and changes to the look of the branches. Now I'm going to start adding details to both sides of the house, like the siding and the little corbels and things like that. And I'll do it using a cool color on the shade side of the house. And then I'll use a warmer color, the moonlit side. So that little detail of changing the color of the detail wash, I think that's an important detail. It really adds to the illustration of the fact of how light, shade, and shadow works. Now I put nondescript shadows underneath the eaves because even though it's a crisp, clear, cold night and the moon is fairly bright, I didn't want to make it about strong shadows. But deep down underneath the covered balcony, those walls would be cooler and darker. They're not receiving any light from the moon. And you can see that I keep adding washes. It's an additive process, slowly but surely getting darker in the details. It's much easier to get darker as we go along than it is to be too bold with a wash, a value of wash, a color of wash, a tone, and then have a mistake that you have to lighten up. The watercolor can be, you can lighten it up to a certain degree, but you can run into real problems trying to go lighter. So once again, now that I'm adding these bats, the detail of these bats, the sky wash below is completely dry. That's a thing you can't see in this time-lapsed video. A lot more time has gone into this painting than what you see in this video. You can't do this much detail in 9 minutes. But the details are the fun, aren't they? That's where you can really nerd out and, putting this siding in on the wall beneath there. It helps that wall. You feel what direction the wall is moving and you feel how it goes. Getting the details now of the other handrail and the wrought iron pickets under these handrails and the columns. And they're all bent and broken with age, right? But the washes underneath those details are completely dry when I add them. And sometimes we draw with the brush, right? So the tree didn't seem like it was quite enough to me. Now I had one of the Halloween tropes in this view is to have a little skull somewhere. So I had masked out a little bit in the grass there, add a little bit more light. What's going on in that room? Ooh. Every detail, I like to build wash upon wash. That's how I control the form, the shape, and the character of an object. And the jack-o'-lantern is kind of the star of the show here. Well, the house is the star, but it's the best supporting actor. And it needs to be handled with care. Here's another cast member that needs to have a proper look. And even though it's basically a silhouette of the black cat, I variegate the washes inside there so that it's not boring to look at. Not that a silhouette is boring, but I like modeling in my details. Coming back into the jack-o'-lantern to finish it up. And finally, your signature, and remove the tape, which all of a sudden really adds a cleaned up look to the painting. And now, happy Halloween. Trick or treat, everybody.